the subscribe button and the notification bell next to it to get notifications whenever I go live. Hey, what's up, family? It's your man, Mark Black. First of all, I want to say to everybody, I hope you're having a great Monday. Don't work too hard. Try to get them for all the bread you can get for the least amount of work. You know how we do. And I hope you all had a wonderful weekend. Just a couple of things before we get started, family. It's come to my attention recently that I have been remiss in letting y'all know about a project of some sort that I have going on. One of the things that's a part of my channel here is that, again, because I'm not taking any type of funding from from AdSense or anything like that, right? Because of that, I'm finding other ways to have you guys help support me, right? So I don't know if I mentioned it or anything like that, but I do have merchandise available, okay? I've got a few different items here, and so I want to make sure that every one of you get an opportunity to check that out, to see if that's something that you would be interested in. I've got some t-shirts, I've got hoodies, just general stuff like that that I think that you would enjoy. And it's branded, with the Black Outcast Media logo and stuff like that, right? So I definitely want to make sure that you guys get an opportunity to do that. So I'm going to pop a link here in the chat to my merchandise store. And if you feel like you want to show some love, some support, again, this link here will allow you to get some branded merchandise for the channel. And make sure you go and do that because it supports me and allows me to keep doing what it is that I do. And not to mention the fact that the shit looks dope. As I continue to grow and progress as a channel, I'm looking forward to having more stuff to offer, more merchandise, more service, more content, just more of everything. So to the extent that you uplift my voice, you're also going to benefit. This is not about you getting talked to and asked and begged for money, right? I want to offer you tangibles for your support. So there's the link to the storefront. Please make sure you go there and visit. If there's something you like, go ahead and do that. As a matter of fact, when I told you that I have a goal of reaching 1,000 subscribers in 6 months, if I hit that goal, my 1,000th subscriber broadcast will also initiate a contest for a free hooded sweatshirt branded with the angry black sheep, my little black man right there that stands by my side, and yeah, we're gonna do the damn thing. So just wanted to mention that, and thank you for bringing that up to me. So the topic for today's broadcast is Steal It All, the reverse engineering of black culture. Now, I bet you're wondering kind of what that entails, right? Because it sounds a little shady, a little weird, right? Reverse engineering, stealing. Don't worry, we're going to get into it. I had a conversation a while back with some people whose opinion that I trust, and part of the information or the takeaways from that conversation for me was that we really actually as black people find ourselves in a very strange and unique situation, right? Not just here in America, but all kind of throughout the diaspora. We find ourselves in a situation that is unique in modern human history. That situation stems directly from our enslavement. Part of the process of enslaving us as black folk was when we were brought here, we were disparate people, family. We were from multiple ethnic groups. Some of us were Mende. Some of us were Fawn. Some of us were Dalman. Some of us were Senegambian, and so on and so forth. So we came from distinct, unique cultural groups. And through the process of enslavement, had the acculturation of those groups stripped away from us. Our languages, our folk ways, mores, and ethics, and morals, and gods we worshiped, and all of that was just simply stripped away. And in its place was put a culture that allowed for our enslavement, that allowed for us to, in a sense, work with the whites, work with the pale people to maintain and perpetuate our enslavement. That process was extremely effective here in the United States of America, as all of you well know, with the unique aspects of chattel slavery as practiced here in the United States. This culture, over roughly 12 generations in the United States, was the culture that helped maintain the status quo. It served two functions. One, it allowed the whites who enslaved us to have the capability to communicate the same ideas to all of us, regardless of our original ethnic heritage, our original cultural ideas, and so on and so forth. By wiping all of that away and instilling, or for lack of a better way of saying it, slotting in or programming a new culture, it allowed them to not have to dominate all of us individually. By all of us having the same cultural ideas, all they would have to do is just simply, through secondary socialization, reinforce that over time, and thus that became the dominant culture for all of us, regardless of our original ethnic and tribal heritage. Right? I mean, this just makes sense, right? You don't want to have to do the people that you got from Dahomey different than the people that you stole from Senegambia. What you want is a culture in place that they will perpetuate over time that allows all those disparate groups to come together as a melting pot, but as a melting pot that allows you as a group to dominate them, right? To be able to maintain your hegemony over them. We are unique here in the diaspora, that we are the only groups of people that in modern day has had that happen to them. And it was on a massive scale. Every single slave that was brought from Africa into the wilds of the West, with different and varying degrees in their respective host countries, all ultimately ended up adopting this new culture of the enslaved. Initially, we were acculturated to survive as slaves. That's important. That's important to note. Our acculturation was modeled, reinforced over generations to ensure that we maintained the ideas, the practices, the teachings that would work to ensure our continued subjugation and oppression by our historic and current oppressors. I mean, this should be something that we don't even have to fucking argue about, right? If you're enslaving people and they're from different ethnic backgrounds, you have to have some system in place that allows you to be able to maintain that domination over a time without having always to use naked force, without always having to revert to the lash or the gun. So you instill a culture in those people that they then perpetuate that allows you to maintain your hegemony and your domination over them. right? But even after our emancipation, we retained the vast majority of that acculturation that had been reinforced over generations upon us, right? Now, why is this so damned important? Like, why am I banging on this drum about our culture, acculturation? You hear me mention it 1,000 times in every one of my videos, it seems like. Because, family, culture is easily, far and away, the biggest hurdle to our liberation struggle that we face. Remember, culture is that which tells you what to do, what to be, how to maneuver, how to operate when nothing else is there to do that. Culture, think of culture as the base operating system for every human being. It's the foundation of how to maneuver, how to see the world, how to operate as a human being on the planet Earth within the reality we all live in. Culture is what allows you to do that. So culture for humans serve the purpose of a basic operating system like Windows or Linux or Mac OS. It's that basic set of instructions that you process everything through. When you have a certain food that you like to eat, that's usually a function of culture. All human beings derive nutrition from the same sources, right? So why is it that we like eating steak, but we don't like eating crickets? Crickets, pound for pound, are actually higher in protein. If it was simply about nutrition, we would eat crickets with no problem. We'd actually have a better source of protein. So why don't we eat crickets? Well, the answer is simple. You've been acculturated that bugs are nasty, that they're filthy, they're bearers of disease, they're dirty. And so you're not putting that shit in your mouth. That's not factual, right? Because there's no rule that says that culture has to actually be factual, right? That it actually has to have a clear tie to reality. Not at all. Matter of fact, many things about culture have no direct reflection in reality at all. At all. Think of some of the most simplest ideas and beliefs, teachings, understandings that we hold, right? For example, men usually wear pants. Now that's changed over time, but primarily, historically, men in our culture wear pants and women wear dresses. Why is that? There's no actual functional reason why women can't wear pants, or conversely, why men can't wear skirts. But if I, as a black man, put on a dress or wear a skirt, I'm going to get called some choice ass names that directly reflect against my masculinity. Why? Because we see pants as a man thing and skirts as a woman thing. It's acculturation. Now, it has nothing to do with reality. I'm just as functional in pretty much anything I would want to do, whether I'm wearing a skirt or a pair of pants. But since I have not been acculturated to think that wearing a skirt or something that drapes around my waist as reflective of my masculinity, reflective of my maleness, then I won't wear that, even if there's no functional difference, even if there's no real reason why I won't wear it. And the list goes on and on. I mean, I'm picking out little tiny things, but there are major things about how we maneuver, how we operate, and how we function as human beings under this, system of whiteism, that since we don't question it, we simply obey our acculturation. It's been socialized into us. So you have two parts to this process, right? You have the acculturation itself. That is the primary initial injection of the code into your brain computer, right? Okay. And that's usually done through your immediate family, right? Mama first. The woman is the first teacher of every child. Okay? So primarily through mama first, we get our basic instructions injected into the brain computer, the basic code for our operating system. After our family, we then have that code strengthened and reinforced through secondary socialization by social pressure and other tools of a group nature that continue to reinforce that initial acculturation, right? So the code is added to, the code base is built upon through our interactions in the community, through the people we fuck with, through the folk we hang out with, through media, through indoctrination, through propaganda, and so on and so forth, right? I hope y'all following me here, okay? So we had this culture injected into us collectively during our enslavement that we held that was pro-survival. It was designed to make sure that we survive without them having to use any type of just constant, overwhelming force against us to ensure their domination. So we benefited the pale people, and to the extent that we were able to survive, it benefited us. So we have retained the overwhelming majority of the culture that was given to us on the plantation. Now, I told you in my broadcast when we was discussing religion, I said that questions are easy and answers are hard. But when it comes to culture, questions are hard and the answers are easy. Now, why is culture different? Why does culture operate differently? When you are born, right, as human beings, we have a few reflexes, right? We have a drop reflex. Like if you take a baby and you make a motion like you're going to drop them, they spread their arms and legs out like this, right? It heralds back to the time when we used to be tree bearers, right? We used to be in trees, right? So when you would fall from a tree, spreading your limbs out like this, increase the odds that you would hit some branches or something along the way down so that you could be able to arrest your fall, right? Even if you think we didn't have evidence for evolution because of this, that, and the third, I mean, you can see it reflected not just in our phenotype and other things, but you can see it reflected even in our basic reflexes, right? So we have the drop reflexes, so on and so forth. But human beings are unique amongst all the other animal species in that we're not necessarily born with what you would call instinct. My son's dog, when she was born as a puppy, sure, she was blind, couldn't hear shit. But over the next couple of weeks, her eyes opened, her hearing got better. And after about a few weeks, she was able to effectively be an immature dog. She was basically the young version of what she would be when she got older. Now, dogs can, to a certain extent, learn like we do. But they also have a lot of built-in programming called instinct that allows them to be effective at being dogs pretty much from the moment they're born. Humans lack that. We don't have a hardwired, like read-only memory or ROM. We don't have a ROM in our brain computer, right? So in order for humans to learn how to maneuver or operate through the world, we have instead acculturation. That process over our lengthy ass childhood, because humans are also unique in one other way. We have one of the longest periods of childhood of any species on the planet Earth. It literally takes humans decades almost to learn how to effectively become humans and operate through our reality, through reality itself. So, just like you don't see a dog going around acting like a cat, you don't usually tend after acculturation to see human beings of one culture tending to act like human beings of any other culture. Because that acculturation process is what bakes in the code. It's what bakes in the programming. So that there's no need to question it. Which is why culture, I would argue, family, is the biggest problem that we currently face as a people. But it is also one of our greatest benefits to blackness. Because remember, I talked about the fact that if we want to make our struggle for our liberation not be about nerfing whiteness, but about buffing blackness, and that we have to make blackness something that's desirable, right? Make blackness something that people would want to be or to have or to do or to embrace, then we need to make blackness distinct in its own benefits. Now, there was a question that I've learned to ask myself, and I had a discussion with Miss Denny a few days ago. And I expressed to her my belief that this question that I'm about to ask us is the key, the golden key that unlocks the door for us as black folk, individually, in our families, and ultimately as the collective that we need to be, or that we see ourselves needing to be. That question is this: has everything we've learned coming up been bullshit? I mean, that's a question that you may hear asked by some black people rhetorically. But I am saying that that question should not be rhetorical. That question should actually be asked, begging an answer. Has everything we've learned growing up as a member of our cultural group, right, our ethnic group, has everything we learned coming up as a human being, as a black human being in our culture, been bullshit? Now, I have an answer. I have an answer. And the answer is no. Not everything that we've learned coming up as black folk been bullshit. Just the overwhelming majority of it has been bullshit. See, family, remember, culture operates best when it is simply introduced and reinforced. We don't tend to question our cultural beliefs. As a matter of fact, what's interesting about our culture, or about human culture, period, is that It's similar to how we operate in a religious sphere. Just like you don't question the teachings of your particular faith practice or spiritual practice, you don't question culture. Culture operates like a secular religion for every human being on the planet Earth. Just like religion, you don't question culture. But because our culture has gone unquestioned, the same behaviors that kept us alive during slavery have now become maladaptive for us as a people, as individuals, in our families, as well as the unaccepted, unwanted collective that we find ourselves a part of, while still continuing to provide a benefit for whiteness. So we don't ask no questions at all about why we think the way we think, why we feel the way we feel, why we talk the way we talk, why we dress the way we dress, why we believe what we believe. We don't ask no fucking questions about that. So now that culture that was basically overlaid and is slotted in to replace our separate individual ethnic and tribal cultures that we have, it no longer works for our survival, and it still provides benefits to whites. So it serves whiteism, and it's to our collective detriment. These behaviors, a lot of these behaviors that you see us express, are the behaviors that stem from the ideas and the acculturation that was given to us as a placeholder culture on the plantation. Facts. We have a placeholder culture. It's not ours, right? We can't really claim that Black society's culture is our culture. Why? Because it has not been a culture that we developed. It was a culture that was given to us. Now, because we have now had some degree of opportunity to be able to kind of shape our ideas, kind of shape our cultural mores and folk ways and ethics and so on and so forth, there are currently some aspects of what we call Black culture that are ours. That is ours, right? That actually was internally generated and belonged to us. The problem is that even a lot of those behaviors that have been generated internally, that has become a part of our culture because we created it or we brought it to life, still were filtered through the pathologies of the placeholder culture, so they don't serve us in any more good stead than pretty much any of the rest of our culture. You combine the fact that we have a placeholder culture that we continue to adhere to, that is now maladaptive for us in our current circumstances, while still providing benefits to pale people. And the fact that we don't question that culture. And you have a recipe for what you see in us today. You have a recipe for disaster. You have a recipe for an atomized collective. You have a recipe for decimated families. You have a recipe for warped roles across the board. To talk about gender for Black people should be useless. We can't even talk about gender because we have women who act like men and men who act like women, or what every other group on the planet would consider to be feminine and masculine. We can't talk about families because we don't even have a family structure that actually works for us. We're still propagating the so-called nuclear family in an attempt to try to assimilate to the dominant culture around us. right? In an attempt to imitate pale people. If we were truly driven by our own cultural ideas, it is likely that the current iteration of the black family would not exist. It doesn't take more than a cursory glance to see that our current familial situations don't fucking work. On so many levels, it doesn't work. One man trying to be with one woman. We have in our community a de facto polygamy. De facto, meaning that in fact, we operate sexually in our culture, which of course controls how our family structures operate. We operate as polygamists. Not polygamists, polygamists. Right? One male is usually sharing multiple women sexually. He's usually paired up with multiple women sexually. Now, of course, we don't want to talk about this, right? Oh, no. No, as a matter of fact, our culture, this placeholder culture tells us that this is foul. This is cheating. But how else are you going to continue to propagate your ethnic group when you have your male population being targeted by every single ethnic group that operates within the confines of this country? So much so that the female portion of our populace outnumbers them and outstrips them. If you have 57% female and 43% male as the ratio of male to females in black society, right? Amongst black people, the black collective. If you try to operate around the idea of the nuclear family, you're essentially saying that 7% of women will never have mates. Or are you? Because in point of fact, just because you want one man that's yours, that you claim is your man, doesn't mean your sister's going to sit there and go, oh, okay. No. What she's going to do is, if she has to, she will make your man her man too. Only there's no communication about it. There's no transparency around it. There's a bunch of cultural ideas and religious ideas around it that make it so-called bad, that make it deleterious. Because let's face facts, family. Culturally speaking, there is no basis in reality for why we don't just admit that we operate in a de facto polygamy. There's no real reason why that can't work. Right? There's nothing in reality, nothing in everything that you can see, touch, taste, smell, and hear that dictates or demands that we operate solely as nuclear families. Nothing. All we have is a bunch of cultural ideas, right? Through socialization, social pressure, indoctrination, propaganda, religious practice and teachings, and so on and so forth, that tell us that the nuclear family is the ideal. If we simply accepted the fact that due to our numeric situation, if we looked at just the reality of the circumstance, we would understand that to a certain degree, if we want to ensure that people are not hurting other people, that they're not lying to other people, they're not committing other forms of social betrayal, that we need to admit that we have a de facto polygamous structure sexually and thus internally in our families, right? One man is actually the man that mates with multiple women. But see, because we have not examined our culture in the light of reality, right? We just continued to propagate these ideas from generation to generation to generation to generation as if they were factual, never questioning the basis behind these ideas, never actually taking what it is that we believe, that we think, that we foster, that we continue to reinforce, and actually measuring it against reality. You know, that big fucking wall that we keep bashing ourselves against. Instead of doing that, we've just continued, like everybody else, to take this fucking lousy, no good ass placeholder culture and simply propagate it without thought, without examination, without question. And this is a problem. I'll give you another example. When you have an ethnic group that essentially is the outcasts, right? The pariahs, right? The throwaways, the scapegoats of a given group, right? Of a given, nation or a given group of people. One of the best ways to ensure their safety is to herd up, right? I'm an angry black sheep and you're an angry black sheep. So we need to be angry black sheep together, right? We need to squad up, posse up. So why then are we still operating under the placeholder culture given to us by white folks, by pale people, that each individual mates or mate bond or pair bond, right? Because we have a de facto polygamy, but we're still acting as if we're monogamous, right? So I'm going to talk about the individual pair bond as the cultural ideal. Why are we still operating like that individual pair bond is sacrosanct and needs to be by itself, right? So you have, under the acculturation we currently bear, a man and a woman get together, and that's a family. Now, of course, we know that's how the pale people operate. That's how we operate. Because our culture is a placeholder culture given to us by pale people. So that's how we operate. But when you have the whole of our ethnic group being targeted to either be made of service and utility to whites and their acolytes, their pets, or to be destroyed if we can't be of utility to them, why would we think that it would be smart to have so many black families? In the light of reality, the fact that we're being targeted as basically we're being treated culturally, economically, politically, and in every other way you could think of like a prey species, but we all want to run as lone wolves. We're being predated on by packs, but we all want to run by ourselves as individual households. If we actually asked questions about our acculturation and look at what our culture tells us about family structures and shine the big bright light of reality on that shit, then logic itself would tell you that rather than having so many black families, we need to have fewer but larger families. We may need to acculturate amongst our people the idea of a corporate or group marriages, right? Because one way to ensure the bonds between individual adults is through sexuality. That's why it's such a powerful tool. The need to propagate the species from one generation to another one, if harnessed properly, will go a long way towards reinforcing positive cultural and social outcomes. Why aren't we, in the light of reality, putting more of an emphasis on marriage for everybody? Why aren't we practicing the idea that we should be making marriage as open to everybody to participate in? Because what marriage provides is the transference of resources from one generation to the next, maintenance of children, right? Maintenance and growth of children, and also protection from our external enemies, right? From external threats and also internal threats, right? Because we're not always going to get along, right? So marriage provides protection for children, protection for the individuals within it, and also for the gathering or the harnessing of resources for the growth of the collective, of the corporate group, of the family itself. So if you look at reality and you actually have no problem with questioning this bullshit placeholder culture we have, logic itself would tell you that instead of having all these individual little black dots all over the map, that we need to start consolidating these people. We need to start consolidating black folk together in fewer but larger families. We need to have all the Johnsons be Johnsons, all of them be related to each other as family, with all of the protections, all of the resource acquisition and accumulation that comes with that. We need to be having group marriages. We're operating as de facto polygamists, and rather than come together as an angry black herd, like we should, like the angry black sheep we are, we're instead running around in these little atomized packs to be picked off at will, willy-nilly. See, family, I told you, we are unique in that, unlike anybody else on this planet, our original ethnic heritage and cultures were stripped away and replaced with a placeholder culture. During our enslavement, our acculturation served two purposes. It served the purpose of being able to provide benefit and utility to white folks, to pale people, and it also, to an extent, helped us survive the trauma that was our enslavement, right? But at this particular point, it is maladaptive without questioning our inherent cultural ideas that we pass on from generation to generation. At this point, we're literally working against ourselves. We're killing and destroying ourselves in a real sense because of this unexamined, unquestioned placeholder culture that isn't ours, that hasn't been derived from anything other than our enslavement. But because we have that placeholder culture, we actually have a unique opportunity. And that opportunity is that we can look at every fucking culture on the planet, find out what might work for us, and take it. Cultural appropriation as reparations. Yeah, I said it. We actually are the only people on the planet Earth right now, today, in existence, that can look at every single ethnic group, every tribal group, every nationality, every culture on the planet Earth, and start through a trial and error process, through experimentation and observation, literally build a culture from the ground up that works. We're the only ones. Cultural appropriation, family, isn't theft. I know you watch a lot of so-called woke conscious, pro-black YouTubers. And they'll tell you, man, look at these motherfucking Beckys braiding their hair like us and blackfishing and so on and so forth. They just steal everything from us. They steal everything from us. You dumb motherfuckers. That's how cultural evolution works. It ain't stealing. That's how human cultures change and alter over time. Human beings have interactions with other human beings from different cultural and ethnic groups, like different distinct ethnic groups or tribal groups or whatever the case may be. They observe them. They see what they're doing, how they do things, what they think, how they operate, what their families look like, what their families don't look like, what they eat, what they don't eat, and so on and so forth, right? And then they try it on for size. And if it works for them, or at least it's not deleterious, then they may continue to propagate it from one generation to the next. Or did you niggas think you were born to eat tacos? I'm sorry. I wasn't aware that black people had a gene that drives them to eat ramen noodles. I didn't know, genetically speaking, that we were driven to wear t-shirts or to believe in a god or gods. You know, it's funny. Saying this out loud actually helps me to understand not how deep the rabbit hole goes, but how basic our problems really are. And when I mean basic, I don't mean basic in the sense of simplistic. I mean basic in the sense of radical, in the root, to the root of what we are. The problems that plague us as black folk are basic. They're right in the core of how we operate as human beings. We've never really examined as a collective the fact that everything we do, even if you, okay, so family, let's take hatred for white people off the table, right? Let's take history off the table. Let's take all that shit off the table for just a second. Not that I hate white folks or don't like history or anything like that. Whatevs. Let's just take all that shit off the table. Let's just make some observations. And I'm not talking about your individual experience, right? Because your mileage may vary. Lil Wayne wasn't wrong when he said that racism hasn't affected him. To a certain extent, he's been sheltered from it, from the fullest expression of it. So it makes sense to him that niggas is just bitching, that they're just complaining, right? Because for him, his individual perception of the truth of the matter is that racism just isn't a thing. He's been protected. He himself has been protected to a certain extent from it. Okay? So fuck your individual perception. Let's step back a second and take a broader view. Okay? Hasn't it ever struck you as strange that everything you see around you tells you that you are a part of this nation, right? That you are an American. That you go to school, you worship, right? Or go to church or to the mosque or the synagogue or whatever your chosen faith practice is. So you have a faith practice. You dress similar to Americans, North Americans, USANs, right? You speak English. When you think similarly to most Americans, right? When black people maneuver through the United States, we maneuver through the United States just as any other American would do. We're no different. Okay. Okay. Haven't you found it strange that although you talk like everyone else does in this society, you've gone to the same schools, you've watched the same media outlets, you've eaten the same foods, you follow the same morals and ethics, right? You do everything that every other American does. Yet, as a collective, your outcomes are radically different than every other American. Even if you didn't know anything about racism, white supremacy, whiteism, whatever you want to call it, even if that term, those ideas, those terms have never, ever been told to you, you have no concept of them. Simple observation on a collective scale would tell you that there's something off about what's happening to us, right? There's something that isn't matching. We talk the same. We dress the same. We eat the same. We think the same. We accept the same political structures, right? Most black people ain't looking to be like the Communist Party or something like that. They vote D for the most part. They vote Democrat. And you have a few of us that vote Republican. We ain't really no different politically than everybody else. We actually are one of the few peoples in this country that actually think the legal system actually has any real validity. Like, we actually believe in the law. Everybody else violates it willy-nilly. So in that respect, we don't even operate like Americans. We actually play by the rules. We adhere to the law. Everybody else do whatever the fuck they want to do. In every way that matters, we are essentially brown-skinned white folks in how we operate, think, maneuver, so on and so forth. This is another reason why white supremacy is so effective, because a lot of us have been acculturated to identify with it. White supremacy, whiteism, propagandizes for individuals. Why? Well, there's a multitude of reasons, but if you need an absolute reason, the most simplistic reason why is because whites have the power to be individuals. But you, being an angry black sheep, if you're an individual, all you are is dinner. So of course, whiteism would have no problem with promoting the cult of individuality. White folks have the resources and the numbers and the power across every type of area of human activity to be individuals. And since as a placeholder culture, our culture tells us to identify with the interests of whiteness over everything else, we're going to operate and act as individuals too. Except that individualism benefits them and it hurts us. You follow me? It hurts us. We have a unique space, a unique opportunity that we're squandering away. Like the Bible says, for you Christian brothers and sisters, my people perish from a lack of knowledge. We don't know that we actually have this unique opportunity. We don't know that we actually are the possessors of a key that could literally change everything. And we refuse to use it because it's much easier to continue to propagate the fuckery that we passing off as culture. You know, this dysfunctional ass bullshit that ain't working for nobody. It ain't working for no black people. We would rather just simply pass that unexamined, unquestioned drivel, this placeholder culture that has no tie whatsoever to the reality of our circumstances. We would rather pass that on than to take up the greatest act of revolution that any people could ever experience. To take up the mantle of the greatest fight that we could ever know. And that fight is not to defeat other people, but through observation, trial and error if you got no better way to do it, and through a willingness to, instead of reject everything we think isn't us, to have an openness to take as much from everybody else and try it on to see how it fits. And if it works for us, make it ours. Instead of that, we've been choosing to pass on the same bullshit. Cultural appropriation isn't theft. First of all, why are you shocked that people want to try on blackness? I never got the outrage that a lot of these conscious, woke, pro-black people express when you see a Becky with braids in her hair. Or you see Brad walking around with his cap turned to the back, trying to act like he got swag. I never understood the outrage that came from that. Haven't you ever heard that imitation is the highest form of flattery? Why is it surprising to you that people want to try what they perceive to be blackness to be tried on? Because I would argue, family, that that's actually evidence that supports what it is that I've been saying through this whole broadcast, is that we are the only unique, distinct people. This globe now has had white people and everybody else all over it. The dissemination of culture has spread all over the globe. They've already feasted off of each other and taken ideas. So this is why when you go to Mumbai in India, it looks like New York. This is why when you go to Beijing in China, it looks like New York. When you go to Addis Ababa in Ethiopia, it looks like New York. When you go to motherfucking San Francisco, it looks like Johannesburg. Because they've already been feeding off of the same fucking cultural pool. And they haven't been trying to reinvent the wheel. They haven't actually been doing anything except putting on the pieces of everybody else's culture. This is why you could go into the heart of Tokyo in Japan and see Japanese people not wearing kimono and doing that. They're wearing motherfucking Brooks Brothers suits and gator shoes. We the only idiots that don't understand that the only way we are going to have a chance to escape the deleterious, overwhelmingly, horrifyingly maladaptive, bullshit ass crap, this fuckery that we go through, is by a renewing of our culture, by actually creating a culture that is ours. By going and looking at what everybody else is doing and seeing what works and what doesn't work, and using reality as a basis. Taking our most cherished ideals, beliefs, mores, ethics, you name it, and shining the harsh light of reality on it. And asking one question: will this work? Will this work for us individually? Will this work for us as families? And ultimately, will it work for us as a collective? Instead of us bitching about people taken from us, we, the descendants of slaves, need to start appropriating pro-survival and growth ideas from every group out there. If everybody's already stealing culture, then we need to be the best motherfucking thieves that humanity has ever seen. There should be no idea on how to operate as individuals, on how to operate as families, how to raise children, how to believe in God or gods or not believe in God or gods, how to eat, how to dress, how to talk, how to learn, what ideas to foster and which ones to discard. There should be nothing at this particular point that's off the table. There should be no idea that's so far out there that we can't at least investigate it, that we can't at least take a look at it. Because I'm going to tell you right now, family, if eating crickets will provide my family with more nutrition than trying to get my hands on a piece of cow, I ain't got no problem with raising and eating crickets. That's what works. I'll learn to doctor them shits up, how to roast them up, season them up, flavor. You know how we do. Niggas is the only motherfuckers that can take a cup of flour, a handful of rice, some beans, and a piece of chicken and turn that shit into a 2-course meal for everybody, a family of 6. That's what we've been doing. We are masters at scavenging, except in the area where it counts. We can scavenge everything. We could take used furniture off the motherfucking street and make a house look nicer than a motherfucker. We could take scraps of fabric and make entire wardrobes out of it. We can take a handful of ingredients and herbs and spices and make gourmet cuisine that'll feed a whole lot of niggas. But we don't want to take ideas. We don't want to take ideas, scraps, and bits of culture from whatever source we find them and try it on to see what works and put together our own motherfucking culture, our culture. It wouldn't be nobody else's, right? Because nobody else has the capability to do this. A Japanese person can't just go and not be Japanese. That's not how it works. A motherfucker who is Haudenosaunee, Iroquois, can't just decide to be something else. They're Iroquois. Somebody who is Khoisan can't just decide not to be Khoisan. No, the only people on the planet Earth that have that opportunity, that have that chance to literally build a culture that works, that is pro-survival, pro-growth, buffing blackness, is us, black folk. We the only ones. No Africans that over in the motherland can do it because it's still broken up into their own tribal groups. They still have their own traditions and histories and shit. They can't give that up. We don't have a history. We're ahistorical. Let everybody tell it. Niggas just popped up like mushrooms in the wilds of the West. We don't have a history, or at least our history don't start until the transatlantic slave trade, and we look at that as a negative. When in point of fact, at this particular point, that's our greatest pro. We're not bound by the dictates of fucking tradition. We're not bound by what came before. We don't have thousands and tens of thousands of years of culture that we have to try to struggle against, that we have to try to swim up the stream against. Behold, for us, all things are made new. We have a unique fucking position on the planet Earth, and it could literally change everything. Can you imagine if we as a people decided to question the essential building blocks of what constitutes our humanity with a mind toward one goal, making it work for us based off of reality itself? We would immediately, the day we started propagating that as a collective, be heads and shoulders above everybody else. Because every other people has cultural accretions. They have basically what you would consider the concept or the equivalent of cultural dead weight. Things and practices and beliefs and ideas that they hold on to that have no use anymore. It's like the equivalent of that story I told you about of the woman who chops the end of her ham before she roasts it. And when you go back to generations, you just find out that great grandma chopped the end off the ham because the pan that she had wasn't big enough to cook the ham as it was. Cultural accretions, things we do that don't really serve a purpose, but it's traditional. It's what's done, right? We're not burdened by that. We don't have the weight of history to consider when we think about how we want to do shit and how we want to operate. We should be out there stealing every motherfucking thing that ain't nailed down. We should look at cultural appropriation as reparations. Them motherfuckers took our culture from us. They owe us a culture, and not a culture that continues to foster the worst traits in us to their collective benefit, but a culture that works for our survival, for our growth, for our thriving, for our flourishing. You deserve that, black people. You deserve that. You deserve to have a culture that works for you, not against you. You deserve to have families that work for you instead of against you. You deserve to have mates that work for you instead of against you. You deserve to have education that works for you instead of against you. But you can't have that as long as you refuse to steal every fucking thing from everybody that isn't nailed down. They're doing it to you. Why not do it to them? Why not start to look at the reality of our circumstances and build a culture based off of that across every area of how we operate? For example, we operate as D and R in the political sphere, just like pale people do, right? But we have brothers and sisters out here like Antonio Moore, Tone Talks, and Yvette Carnell, who argue that we need a transformational politics. No more of the status quo. We need to work toward the ideas that literally transform how black people do politics. And they give concrete ideas based off of real data, real information, reality. We got people who hold on to outmoded interpretations of their particular faith practice. But we have pastors, priests, imams, priestesses, bishops, and so on and so forth out there that are advocating for a radical understanding of their faith tradition. One that puts the needs, the desires, the goals, the aspirations, the uplift of our people above everybody else. So we can finally truly say that God is with us. We have expert educational teachers out there who understand how We, the descendants of slaves, genetically, over time, have learned to learn, not necessarily by being lectured to, but by doing. And a combination of seeing and doing, visual and kinesthetic, who are developing pedagogy and teaching didactics that work to educate our children in the way that our children primarily learn. When you decide that we have a bullshit ass placeholder culture that is killing us, and you're willing to let that bullshit go and start looking at every aspect of how we operate, how we do things, what we believe, how we maneuver, all of that, with one question in mind: is it bullshit? Does it work? No? Throw that shit on the trash heap. Is sitting here pretending that every man only has one woman, is that really working for us? Because I can't tell from the high rates of STIs and single motherhood being created in our community. Oh yeah, we have de facto polygamy. Just nobody's talking about it. Nobody's being honest about it. So sexually transmitted infections are rampant. Unintended pregnancies are rampant. Children who will not be cared for, who will not be a part of an intact family, is rampant. Women out there with no mate but mad babies, shit is rampant. Oh yeah, we have a de facto polygamy. So why not just come out in the open and just admit that you're already sharing black men? That our circumstances require that women share black men. That y'all don't have to like it until our numbers shift, until they're more equitable, until there's more, roughly on par the same number of black males as there is black females. You sharing them. Why not just tell the truth? Why not encourage marriage from the earliest ages? Why not start marrying off our children when they're born? Like some other cultures do. They have arranged marriages. When you're born, you 4 years old and be engaged to another family already, because marriage ain't just about, oh, I love him or I love her. It's about the exchange of resources, about the exchange of genetic material, and about the propagation of our collective moving forward to the next generation. Marriage is a contract. See, if we were being honest and we were looking at our culture with a critical eye to try to see what the reality of our situation is and to see how our culture matches our reality, we would have group marriages. We would make marriage as easy to get into as breathing and as hard as fuck to get out of as dying. Because within the confines of a marriage, you can have sexual access to mates. You can have partnerships and protection. You can have a place where you can gather together your individual resources into a collective that allows for capital accumulation and resource management. But as long as we still lying to ourselves that this bullshit placeholder crap that we got is our culture, we can't explore any of these ideas. Steal it all. Steal it all. Do the one thing nobody's expecting you to do, black man, black woman. Do the one thing nobody is expecting you to do. Reverse engineer every culture on this planet Earth. Go back through it, pick it the fuck apart, dissect it, unpack it. Look at every action, every thought process, every belief, every moray, every folk way, every mode of dress, every mode of speech, every bit of cuisine. Look at it all. They don't want black people to have passports. Because if we actually start traveling all throughout the world, we would see more than just our little myopic view of what's out there. We would actually start to see that we are a part of a greater humanity, and that humanity belongs to us too. You want Black lives to matter? Make them matter. Take what works. Try it on for size. Play with culture like you play with Lego blocks. Everybody else do. We are some of the most, we sit here and talk about pale people like the pale people, they don't change. They're ultra conservative. The motherfuckers is more progressive than we are. We've taken their placeholder culture and we've made it into the unquestioning mass of ideas, folk ways, mores. And they change. They don't have a problem with braiding their hair up to look like us. But we got a problem with men wearing skirts. I've worn wraps before, like a dhoti, from like India. Or like the people in Samoa wear, the Polynesian peoples. That shit's comfortable as a motherfucker. Not to mention the fact that you can maneuver just as well. You can run, do what you got to do. You get airflow, to your homies down there. You see what I'm saying? Right? Like, you niggas is stupid. I would wear a wrap all day and 3 times on Sunday. And even if it's cold outside, you just layer the shit. You take maybe a woolen one, right? Or a thick cotton one over a thin linen one, which I've worn before too. I don't have a problem with questioning everything that we are. And you shouldn't either. Question it all. We don't have the luxury of the unexamined life. We don't have the luxury of the unexamined culture. We don't have to sit here spending all our time hating on everybody else. We can feed off them, just like they feed off us. What's wrong with looking at how the Chinese people do shit and seeing what parts of what Chinese people doing can work for us and taking that shit from them? They can get mad about it. Oh, y'all trying to imitate Chinese. So the fuck what? Y'all trying to imitate black people, so it's a win-win. Why not look at what pale people even are doing that could work for us and taking it and utilizing it to our collective benefit and to their collective detriment? Because remember, anything that buffs blackness by its nature under whiteism is going to nerf whiteness. We've been spending all our time focused on whiteness when all we have to do is just make blackness great again. Make blackness great. Buff blackness. Make blackness the thing to do. Make us the most intrepid motherfuckers on the planet Earth. Make us the ones everybody think of when they think about somebody who explores shit, who tries shit, who eats shit, who does shit, instead of looking at pale people. I look forward to the day I see a black man as the crocodile hunter. Instead of us always carrying the motherfucking stereotype that we run away from everything. We won't never try nothing new. We bitch about motherfuckers acting like they ain't black, but we don't want to fucking be black anyway. Black ain't worth being right now. Nobody wants to fucking be black. So let's make being black great again. Let us buff blackness. Let us look at everybody. Look at the motherfucking Arabs. Look at the Dot Indians. Look at the motherfucking Feather Indians. Look at the goddamn Chinese. Look at the motherfucking Samoans. Look at everybody. Look at the Inuit. Look at the motherfuckers over in Norway. Look at the Mongolians. Look at the Khoisan. Look at everybody. Look at how they do things. Look at what they think. Find out about what they believe, how they understand the world, how they maneuver through it. Find out what they eat, what they dress, what they talk like, what they dance like, what they fuck like. And if that shit can work for us, let's take it. Steal it all. It all belongs to you anyway. They took everything from us and gave us this bullshit ass, no good ass placeholder culture. Just to barely keep us just above breathing. This world owes you a culture. And since they don't have a sense of justice in them to actually help build you up, then the justice that you'll receive is the justice you take. Steal it all. Steal everything from these motherfuckers. Like in the words of Leonidas, who I have no problem quoting, even though he was one of those so-called Greek faggots. Leave them nothing. Take from them everything. They would do it to you. They have no problem with dancing like us, talking like us, dressing like us, acting like us, trying to live like us. Fine. Let them do it. Let them try to be like us. Let them try on blackness. We don't really like it anyway as it currently stands. And let us start stealing from their ass. Let us start looking at what Korean folk do and see how it might work for us. Let's start looking at how Ghanaians live and see how it might work for us. And take that shit. Don't ask them for it. Just start practicing it. Start trying it on for size. Start trying to pass it on to other black people and see how it works out. Let's try telling the truth about the fact that we have a de facto polygamy in our culture sexually. As a part of our familial structures. As a part of our mate structures. Our pair bonding structures. And let's just be honest with it. If you got 2, 3 women right now, sit their ass all down. You know you love them all. It ain't about you love one over the other. Love ain't got nothing to do with it. They all providing you something. So sit them all down and tell the truth for once in your damn life. And say, I want all of yous. But I want it to be above board. I want all of us to work together to build a family. I want all our children to be safe. I want to love all of yous. Tell the truth one time in your motherfucking life. And I want you to get with other brothers and sisters and maybe y'all organize as a family too. You call yourself the Johnson family. Call yourself the Browns. Call yourself the Blacks. I don't give a fuck. But why leave those other families out there flapping in the wind? Get with other angry black ass sheep like yourself. Other motherfucking undercasts. Untouchables. Start to organize in larger families. Start marrying your motherfucking kids off but when they born. Oh, I got a little girl. That family over there got a little boy. We need to get them together. Just try it on. If it don't work for us, it don't work for us. That's fine. But we're not trying shit on right now. We still propagating the same fuckery culture that we were given. And it ain't working. It don't work. It's obviously, demonstrably true that it does not work. That's all I got to say on it, family. Steal it all. Reverse engineer humanity. Look at everybody and what they doing. Ain't nobody's culture off the table. Ain't no cultural practice off the table. I don't care if it's scarification or eating bugs or whatever. Whatever it is, we can try it on. We the only ones that can. We have the most unique position of any people on the planet Earth in that right now we can literally build our own culture. We can DIY a culture that is based in reality through solid trial and error and experimentation that literally works. And we can propagate that. Nobody else can do it. Go to work, black people. Go to work. I know, as if you don't work hard enough, right? But this is the greatest job that we have as a people. We have to fix this problem of this placeholder culture that is slowly killing us, that continues to benefit our historic and current oppressors. It can't continue to obtain. We got work to do. And I believe that we can do it. So, family, as always, until next time, I wish you love, peace, prosperity, and power. Real power to our people.